and welcome to another craft. Today, as you can't tell, I had a theme in mind as the 4th of July is right around the corner, which also happens to be Captain America's birthday. So I had this great plan for a wreath I was gonna make that would kind of mimic the shield aspect for Captain America, and unfortunately it was a tad over budget for what I was planning, so we didn't get to do that. My substitute is, here's my wreath form, which we don't even really need. You can just go out and buy this lovely little wall decoration shield. It's got the hook on it. You just hook it on your wall right there. So there's your Captain America substitute wreath for today. Hopefully we'll be able to come back later down the road and do the one I had planned. So it would look beautiful. So I'm really bummed that we don't get to do it today. But as you might notice, the background for my video has changed. One of the things I've always loved are these book collage. So today what we're going to be doing is creating one of these book page collages. Now, I've always loved these. I've seen them on Pinterest. I thought they were so cool. And this one is actually made up of different table runners, like you might see at a party or a wedding. And I happen to have a ton of old books. They're just falling apart. The used bookstores don't want them for any credit. There's really nothing to do with them. I've read them. They're just sitting on the shelf. So I thought it would be the perfect time to try and utilize them and give them new life. And that's what we have. I like it. The idea behind these is really great because they have multi-purpose. So you can use them for, like I said, a party. If you make one, someone could use it at their wedding. And they also make a lovely little photo or video backdrop. So I love things like that that can have multiple functions and uses and life. So we have a friend joining us. So the two things you're going to need are an old book. Today we're using the Time Machine and some kind of adhesive. I'm using the Elmer's clear glue. I've seen other people who have adhesive backs that you can get off of Amazon. I personally didn't like those because I wanted to be able to see the book pages through it. When you have the adhesive back, it gives you a very sturdy foundation, but you also have whatever they've printed on the back of the adhesive, which is, you know, maybe a faux leather or wood backdrop. So this is what I'm using, but really it's all experimenting and fun. So the one thing you will hear me say throughout is this craft is a lot about personal preference, and that can make it really difficult to get through certain stages because there's no easy how-to. It's more, this is how I did it. Do it however you want to. I have a supportful friend right here next to me. Thank you. So to get started, the first thing you're going to need to do is just pull your book apart, really just page by page. You're folding it down, wrapping it over. That's really the best one I recommend, just folding it over, pushing down on the spine. Sometimes you'll run into ones where there's a little extra give and it's starting to peel back from the glue. Definitely you can start in those areas. You want to utilize that. And this is one of those crafts. I know time is a big deal for a lot of people when they're crafting. And so the nice thing about this is you are able to do it in stages. You can take your pile of decrepit books that are falling apart that you want to use for these crafts, set them on a table while you watch TV or listen to audiobooks. You can start breaking them down. Unfortunately, the part that takes the longest, which is the actual assembly, is hard to break into stages as easily. You can just, I guess, assemble some and then come back later. So even then, I guess You have somewhat of a stage there. My director now. Cats. So many functions. Okay, so the first thing you're gonna do, you see what I mean about how when you're done, you finished peeling apart the glue, it kind of stands up on its own. So you're going to go, I typically do not include the title pages or the chapter page, if there is one. So you'll get it flat, starting with chapter 1. And then just kind of firmly pressing your hand and the little tugs. The closer you can get kind of to that spine. So the reason is you don't want to just yank it out. So you can, I don't know if you can see, but there's a slight wanting to come out a little bit and rip. So I'm gonna transition and just little tugs, a little bit. Oh, see, it's wanting to rip there. So going in, using my fingers on either side, little tugging pulls. Okay, so it did a little bit of a rip, but remember what I told you. It's not the end of the world because you can stick something over that, tilt it, and honestly, it just kind of adds to it. So I know if you're like me, you get stressed out about it. The other thing you can do is, where was it that I was before? Sometimes it will lead you to, right here, where it wants to tear. So you can start here and say, this wants to tear out, and then work your way from here. Oh no, you tricked me. Being so stubborn. Don't be stubborn. So see, that's my cracking. Just what we want. So what I've done is these are all broken free, and then I've managed to get these off into chunks. Just basically tearing them away from the spine. So this is what I was talking about, where once you're able to get them kind of into little sections like this, it makes it easier. And of course, there's that one's gonna disprove me. Be stubborn. The one thing you do have to watch out for is feeling the pages as you go, because sometimes what will happen is one of them will take more of the glue, and you won't really notice it until you get to assembling them. So if you catch it in this stage, it's nice. So this portion is done. Now all you have to do is assemble it. Alright guys, we are down in the special place I like to call my floor, because it's easier to kind of arrange your runner and get an idea of what you're working with on your floor in a very wide open space. It's hard on the desk. So I have gone ahead and removed the chapter titles and set them off to the side. Now, if you'll remember, I told you I like to put the book in order because I want to be able to have the chapter titles. The reason you do that is basically just to have some kind of semblance. Here's the Sherlock Holmes. So you'll see when you have the one, I'll show you all the way up on my wall, behind the scenes. So the idea is you don't want it to hang over your table. So you're gonna give yourself that excess, and then around here, you're gonna have here, this is chapter 1, chapter 2, and since these have titles, that gives you that kind of extra. I've selected the ones that go best with, I think, the theme of the runner is. And same with the Romeo and Juliet. I pulled out the prologue because that's such a classic line, and then we've even arranged it to where I have Enter Romeo and Juliet in that same kind of area. So if you're looking at this, you're like, oh, that part's gonna hang over, so this is about where you be on the table, and you kind of have that flow to it. Sherlock Holmes, that's one of the ones, there's 2 different parts, so I just chose 7 of the chapter titles that I thought were most interesting and carried on the idea of Sherlock Holmes. So that's the idea. Here we are back on the floor. So of course when you have, you know, your numbers 1 through epilogue, it's not necessarily as essential. It's just kind of nice. Because if you're like me and you go to events like this, you're looking for that. Where's 1 through the end? So it's just something I do because it's what I like. So when you're starting, of course, I don't know if you noticed with those others, when I get to the end, I kind of have that little one sticking out at the end. If you want to do it straight, catty-cornered, that is your personal choice. Like a kind of just chaotic look to it. Like I have thrown these on the floor. I don't want them to match, and that's the hard part. So for me, if I do it this way, that's like this one. If I do it this way, and so on. So I don't want it to necessarily just be this all the way across. So it's kind of like you enter this concept of, you know, how do you make it look chaotic while not being too much of a pattern. Okay, so now you're done. This is I have stretched it out across the floor. And like I said, it's so hard to get stuck in this first part of the way to arrange it, but really all you were doing is just getting an idea of length and where your ends are gonna be. So I do this to, I guess, pre-game. So if that's where my end is, ideally that's gonna hang over. So about here is where I'm gonna start putting my chapters. So I've got my first one here, and I am just arranging these where I want. So it's gonna hang, kind of start with these catty-cornered a little bit. So once I have this kind of how I want it, I'm just gonna take, and this is just crystal clear, transparent school glue. It is washable. And I'm just gonna, small lines, press it down. Now, the one thing you run into with this is because you do not have a backdrop, it will, in order to make it sturdy, you need to glue everything that it's going to touch. So what that means is I'm going to shift this back so that will keep its shape. But what that means is you're going to need to get it any place that would be glued down needs to be. So when you pick it up, if that's not glued, that's going to flap up and down. So I'm just going to go in. This is also great for holding stuff in place. So if you have one, you know where you want it to be, and you go ahead and attach it. It's really good, since you've seen how temperamental these pages are and how frustrating it can be to try and get everything lined up. If you have one and you know where you want it to be, going ahead and attaching that one kind of gives you some stability with the others. So now, chapters. What if we do that one there? Yes, I like it. Okay, so I've discovered that if you just kind of arrange the chapters how you want them. I wish that this would move. So if I come in and I've just I put 6 here and glued it down. This isn't even here. And then I say, okay, 7. Let's put 7 right here, a little bit of glue. And then, let's move these out of the way, 8. It's then easy to come and say, ha ha ha, oops. Sorry, the weight is pulling my papers off. They don't want to cooperate. All right, so I can then come back with my extra papers and say, this is, there we go. Say, okay, let's fill this in right here. This is a bunch of empty space. It's just, it really is chaos. Arranged chaos. Why? But it's, I don't know, it's nice. It's nice to have this figuring out with the chapters. That's why the chapters are so important, is, especially when you have so many like this, is being able to say, okay, and letting that kind of arrange be part of your guide. So this is working for me. Just the corners, slightly tilting it so that that's different from this one. Ooh, I'm gonna go really crazy with 11. Basically, it is just constantly adding pages at slightly different angles from the one before. It's just, this part takes a while. You gotta figure out what you're doing, and then you've gotta get them arranged, and then you gotta glue them, and then you gotta wait for the glue to set. Done. That is essentially it. You just go all the way down. The runner is finished. Here is mine, the tail end right here. The final page of the book. So you can see it came together in a kind of chaotic pattern, looking very askew. It is just under 9 feet long. So keep in mind, when you're doing stuff like this, the books I've worked with are right around 200 pages. So this one was, I think, 147. Yes. All right, guys, I hope you had fun crafting your own book page creations, whether it be table runners or flowers. I'm gonna definitely do other book page crafts in the future. So many on my Pinterest board. I just can't figure out which one's next. I just keep making these and expanding my backdrop. So I have so many books. I hope you guys have a great week, whether you are celebrating 4th of July or in another country. Have fun, celebrate Captain America's birthday. If anyone's interested, I might in the future tell you how to make a lovely headband like this. It's very simple. This is complicated. This is amazingly simple. I've had it for years and I use it for any kind of red, white, and blue decorations, which we have so many. So that's handy. I hope you guys have a great week. Bye. Look at this amazing thing I found at McKay's. It's there's a watch in here, but honestly, I don't even care about the watch. It's a Obi-Wan at Darth Maul. What? From clearly the best of the Star Wars films. Some people just died inside right there. That's how I feel. On the inside. This is not that hard. I am just saying goodbye. Why am I rambling?